How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Infinite Sports. I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, to recap Week 15 in the NFL and another crazy week. Some injuries we're going to talk about. Some teams got eliminated from playoff contention that I wanted to get into and discuss. And some surprises. Talk about where certain teams are and, the confidence level that I may have in some going forward and things like that. So, one of the things I wanted to get into, we're going to start off right out of the gate talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. Because the Chiefs, we talked a little bit about it last week about the possibility of the Chiefs being eliminated from the postseason prior to the postseason, and it happened. The Chiefs ended up getting eliminated. They fell to the hands of the LA Chargers, losing 16-13. But not only that, but towards the end of the game, Chiefs are trying to drive down the field and potentially tie the game with a field goal and send the game to overtime. And as that was being put together, Patrick Mahomes ends up going down with a knee injury and gets helped off the field, helped back into the locker room. And it was later determined that Patrick Mahomes tore his ACL. And it's going to be a 9-month recovery, which could he potentially miss the start of next season? Yes, but he's doing everything he can to make sure that he is playing, he is starting week 1 for this team. And this basically marks the end of this point in time where the Chiefs, they've dominated the league. They've dominated the AFC. They've been in the AFC Championship game, every single year since 2018. And now they're going to be on the outside looking in this time. And this marks the end of what has been an incredible run for them. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't get back to this point or that point and try to win another championship and win more championships, because I do think that there are more championships in Patrick Mahomes' future. But there needs to be changes. There needs to be changes. You got an older team. There's going to be some guys that might not be back next year. Specifically Travis Kelce. We'll get into that in a little bit. But there definitely needs to be some tinkering, as we've been saying. And I think as long as they got Patrick Mahomes, they're always going to be a team that can be a threat. Now, there could be some down years, because maybe it's not a quick fix. I know I used the word tinkering. Because there are still good players on this team. It's not like the Chiefs are, the Raiders or the Titans. You gotta reload. Gotta inject some more youth into this team, and you got to get some more dynamic playmakers. I know I talked about the running back position. The other thing too is like I've been saying, I've said this before, with the offensive line, because that was a weakness for them even last year, but it's been a weakness this year. That's something that they have to correct, and I think you're going to need some players on defense too. Because Chris Jones is not getting any younger. I think you need to add somebody else there. So I don't think this team is just going to completely disappear. But they're going to need to make changes. They're going to have to add. And I think that in time, they will get themselves back up from this. And they're going to be a good team again. And Patrick Mahomes, prior to him getting hurt, and prior to this slide, which it was really, he just had no time to throw. Going up against these good defenses, the Texans, and then he had the Chargers, obviously, this past week. It was tough. It's tough to, get through all that. But then you could say, well, look at Justin Herbert, what he did with that offensive line going up against the Chiefs. The Chargers were still able to get the win. But, and I don't want to come off as making excuses, but those are good football teams that they were going up against, and the Chiefs are not the same team that they have been. you know. So, but Patrick Mahomes had a good year. I mean, I think he had one of his better. He was having one of his better seasons. It's just the Chiefs are kind of on the losing end of a lot of these games. Whereas last year, in these one-score games, I mean, I don't think they won a single one-score game this year. Almost every loss was pretty much every loss was, even including this past Sunday, one-score loss, and they were on the losing end of that. Whereas last year they were on the winning end. So you saw a complete flip. And I think you could tell early on in the season, the first couple of games that, yeah, this is not going to be the same. This is not going to be the same. Now, I didn't want to hit the panic button with the Chiefs because, they're the Chiefs. And again, you look at the track record. But as the season went along, and they did have a middle part in the season where they were playing good football. They beat the Lions on Sunday Night Football, and they were playing well. Mahomes played well. And it looked like they were starting to trend back up. But then they lost to the Bills, and then they kind of just, I think they've now lost 5 of their last 6. It just, season took a tailspin. And, yeah, no, they're not going to be in the postseason. So it's going to be a new team coming out of the AFC. We saw Joe Burrow and Tom Brady knock off Mahomes in the postseason prior to the Super Bowl, but now it's going to be something else. It's wide open. There's parity this year, and I love that. I obviously there are teams you have in mind with who you think could go to the Super Bowl, but there's no clear-cut favorite. I do think that every team can be beat. I really do believe that. I mean, the Chiefs last year could have been beaten, but it's just they didn't. They didn't get beaten. I mean, there were better Chiefs teams that have made it to the Super Bowl, obviously, than last year's. Obviously, because the ones that won. So yeah, but it's just it's unfortunate, what happened with Mahomes. I know the Chiefs fatigue and people getting annoyed with him and some things that don't even have to do with him. And I know a couple years ago when he complained about the offensive offsides, that kind of turned a lot of people off. But Patrick Mahomes is the face of the NFL. And right now he is the best quarterback in the NFL. And to see a marquee player like that go down, and he's a guy he plays all the time. The only time he, missed time due to an injury was when that game in Denver in 2019 when he dislocated his kneecap. But then he came back a couple weeks later. And that was the first Super Bowl run for them. His first Super Bowl championship, 2019. But other than that, guy plays all the time. Plays all the time. Plays through injuries. I mean, look at 2022. Suffered that high ankle sprain against the Jaguars. He got taken out of the game, and Chad Henne came in, and played a little bit for him. Then he came back in, and then he played through it in the championship game against the Bengals and in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. He's tough. He guts it out. But this was an injury. You can't do that. I know Phillip Rivers, who we'll talk about, he played in a championship game with a torn ACL, but for the most part, you don't usually play through an injury like that. You don't. But yeah, it really is unfortunate. And I hope that he's back on the field 100% next year, and he goes out there and he plays well. And I expect him to do that. So it's just, again, I know there's a lot of Chiefs hate, Chiefs fatigue. I know the haters are all happy this week, but yeah, no, I mean we're gonna see something different this year, but I didn't want to see Patrick Mahomes getting hurt. I mean, the Chiefs, odds of them making the playoffs, I mean, it looked like they were gonna lose the game anyways, and it didn't look like they were gonna make the playoffs. Even if he was able to complete that game, so but didn't want to see Patrick Mahomes go down like that. So, but you know what? He'll be back. And what's funny is, so this was his 9th season, which I can't even believe that's the case, how fast it's gone. So Tom Brady suffered the same injury in his ninth season, and that was back in week 1 of I think it was the 2008 season. He tore his ACL, and then look, there was a gap. There was a gap. Tom Brady went 10 plus years, right? He went 10 years without winning a Super Bowl. 10 years. And then, that streak ended in 2014 against the Seahawks. I don't think it's going to be a 10-year gap. And maybe it is. Like I said, I think there's more Super Bowls in Mahomes' future. But yeah, maybe it could be a little bit before he gets back there again. But I do think he's going to win some more. I really do believe that. But yeah, that is a weird coincidence that him and Brady tearing their ACLs in their ninth season. But yeah, Tom Brady was another guy. He played through everything. He never missed time, other than when he was suspended for Deflategate. But he played all the time. He played all the time. So yeah, the Chiefs, end of an era. End of an era. But I also wanted to bring this up too. Is Travis Kelce talking about the injury on his podcast. And if you read the quote, or if you listen to the podcast, when he talks about Mahomes coming back next year, rather than saying we, he says the Chiefs will be expecting him back, or however he said it. I don't have the exact quote in front of me. But he didn't say we. So that has a lot of people thinking that this is going to be it for Travis Kelce. And I said after last year, I was like, yeah, I think this is it. But I thought Kelce, at times, he's not the same player. But I thought he at least looked better than what I thought he was going to look like. He was getting, he was scoring touchdowns this year. Still making some big plays here and there. But, that Texans game, couldn't hold on to the ball that led to an interception. Yeah, this could be it for him. This might be it for him. And it's going to be different. Mahomes not having that security blanket in Kelce. If this is truly it. Because maybe he is coming back. But how he worded that, it seems like this could be it. But Andy Reid's not going anywhere, so you're still going to have him. And you'll still have Spagnuolo. So, yeah, it might be a little bit, like I said, before the Chiefs get back, but they're going to be back. They're going to be back.